right. Oh, hey, the show's begun. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a Friday afternoon edition of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, filling in for our host, David Rabinovitz, who I could say is on assignment and make it sound really cool, but he's actually just taking the weekend off. I believe he's down in South Carolina with his bride. So we are going to be talking about digital payments in the cannabis industry. We also now have a member of the Marijuana Policy Project, Matthew Schweich, is with us. He's also involved with the South Dakotans' quest for cannabis legalization. And also, as always, welcoming one of our reporters from California, Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report. Hello, Christopher.
How you doing, Jimmy?
Good. I'm doing good. And not only do we have Christopher from California, but we also have a dear friend of the pro cannabis media community, Ashley Elsner from Artery. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Jimmy. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you again. It was fun in MJ Biz. I think at some point I saw you there, right?
We had dinner.
We did, right? That's right. We did have dinner. Anyway,
we did end up catching up.
That's right. The whole week was kind of a blur. But,
it is a blur.
But we do want to start with Matthew, because there's a lot of interesting things going on in the South Dakota and Montana corridor. Matthew, can you give us an update on what is going on in your neck of the woods? And pretty much everybody on this show already is pretty upset about what happened in South Dakota since the vote was passed. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, I assume a sympathetic audience here.
Yes.
So South Dakota, a quest is a good word, odyssey, some part of Dante's Inferno, some realm of purgatory, perhaps. But we're going to get there in the end. I have no.
He's already.
So recap, we passed Amendment A and Measure 26. Here's the launch sign. Amendment A was a recreational law. Measure 26 was a medical law, and both immediately came under attack from Governor Kristi Noem. She tried to severely delay implementation of Measure 26 by a year. We actually won that battle in the legislature. She tried to pass a bill. We defeated her bill in a Republican supermajority controlled legislature, which was a great outcome. And then she went after Amendment A in court, and she filed a lawsuit to overturn it. They went after it for a number of reasons, but the one that ultimately mattered was a single subject rule. Interestingly, at first, her office denied that they had directed the lawsuit to take place. And then in January, she filed an executive order saying that, actually, from the very beginning, I was directing this lawsuit. So her office misled the public about the nature of her involvement in the lawsuit. She's also refused to tell the public how much taxpayer money she spent on this lawsuit. Ultimately, it reached the South Dakota Supreme Court, and the day before Thanksgiving, they issued their ruling to overturn Amendment A. They actually upheld the lower court's ruling against Amendment A. And I think it's a travesty of a ruling. I try to look at, I'm someone with a healthy respect for the judiciary. I think you need a population to have respect for the judicial branch to have a democracy in the long run. So I'm very reticent to really criticize courts and judges. But in this case, I feel obligated to. I think the ruling was terrible. And basically, they said that we did log rolling and that we tacked on medical marijuana and hemp onto a recreational bill. And they said the rest of the initiative's fine. So there was one sentence in Amendment A about medical and one sentence in Amendment A about hemp. And all it said was, by a certain point, I believe the date was in 2022, the legislature should pass laws on medical and hemp. And the reason that was in there is that we felt that if you're going to legalize cannabis for adults, it certainly makes sense for there to be a hemp law in place and a medical law in place. And at the same time, we knew that there was a Measure 26 on the ballot, so we didn't want to interfere with that. But in the event that Amendment A passed and Measure 26 didn't, there would still be a pathway to medical. Why should adults be able to use cannabis recreationally, but a 17-year-old with severe epilepsy is a criminal, and their parents are criminals if they try to stop their seizures? That doesn't make any sense. And what I think is and I'll stop in a second, what I think is so wrong with this ruling is that basically they're saying that a certain number of voters would have felt pressured to support Amendment A because it had medical in it. So, maybe they weren't on board with recreational, but because we bundled them all together, the voter would have thought, you know what, I better vote for this because I really want medical, or I really want hemp. I don't like recreational. The problem with that argument is the fact that Measure 26 was on the ballot and passed with 70% of the vote. Amendment A was 54%. So voters had the option of just voting for medical. And it's clear that they weren't confused. 70 versus 54% is a huge difference on election day. So there was no pressure to vote for Amendment A for medical marijuana reasons. And there was no confusion. So what is the basis for this? And I would challenge anyone to find me somebody in the entire state of South Dakota who thinks that Amendment A was just a hemp bill, or felt pressured to vote for it because they wanted hemp, because the legislature had already passed hemp. So I think it's really a terrible thing they've done. And the worst, perhaps, to just kind of pour gasoline on the fire, they waited 7 months. They took so long to issue a ruling, and they waited until after the exist for submitting initiatives for the next election. So if you're going to overturn people's initiative, at least do that ruling quickly so that those people can learn from that ruling and adjust accordingly. And they've also done a tremendous amount of damage to the public's faith in their elections, in their democracy, in their judiciary. I've heard it. I've seen it firsthand, here in Sioux Falls, in the campaign office, people coming in to sign. So many people saying, I don't even think my vote counts. I'm only doing this because I'm pissed off. And I've had to talk people back into voting. And especially young voters, some of whom, registered and voted for the first time. Now they're thinking, why should I even bother? That is a tragedy, and something that was completely avoidable if they hadn't waited this seven months to issue a ruling. So obviously I have a lot of things to say about this, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, but it's good. And you can sense how upset you are too, Matthew. I can tell. And rightfully so. You got 225,000 votes in an election that now people are saying, what is democracy? Why are we even voting anymore? And I can understand the frustrations of the young people. Let me ask you a pointed question, though. When is Kristi Noem up for re-election?
She's up for re-election next year.
Isn't that convenient? So do you see this example, perhaps costing her place as governor?
Well, gubernatorial elections are complex, but I can tell you a poll was just released that showed her with reasonable approval ratings, but her biggest loser was marijuana policy. Only 40% of voters agreed with how she's handled it. And so I think if she could go back in time, she would have done things differently. I think that cannabis has been one of her biggest political problems this year. And that I don't know if she would have not done Amendment A, the lawsuit, but I think she would have handled Measure 26 differently, because that was also particularly egregious. To come out and say, I want Amendment A overturned, and I want you to push back Measure 26 from July 1st of 2021 to 2022. Effectively, and in the meantime, no decrim, no interim decrim measure. Her position was that a cancer patient or someone with epilepsy or someone with serious health condition should face up to a year in county jail for 1 gram of cannabis. That was effectively her policy position after 70% of voters approved medical, which is like an astonishing level of arrogance and just a despicably low opinion of the constituents she represents. So I think she would do that differently. The degree to which cannabis plays a role in her re-election campaign, I think it could, depending on the candidate running against her. But whatever candidate runs against Kristi Noem is going to need to position themselves as a moderate. So to make cannabis the be-all and end-all of their campaign, or even their first or second talking point, is probably not the right political strategy, despite the popularity of cannabis reform in this state, because there's a whole bunch of other issues that people are going to use to decide their vote for governor. You don't want to too liberal if you're running against Kristi Noem, but is it a third or fourth talking point? And is it tied really into a bigger question of respecting the will of the people? Yeah, I think that is a weapon to be used against her. That being said, she's generated plenty of scandals all on her own, with nepotism and misuse of public funds. and basically, gallivanting around the country, raising money at fancy dinners with fancy people instead of running the state. So she's got other issues other than cannabis. I'm obviously no fan of hers.
Obviously not. And, this week we did have some news about the Safe Banking Act being pulled from the Defense Amendment budget. I know you work with the Marijuana Policy Project. What's the reaction? Obviously, it's funny, when they added the amendment to the defense bill, I couldn't understand why they would waste their time doing it. But now that they've taken it off, why go through that exercise, Matt?
Well, as we all know, there's just a lot of dysfunction in Congress. I regret. I don't like being a federal reform pessimist, but I have been for many years and remain one. I think the filibuster basically kills all policymaking in this country, not just on cannabis, but on everything. It makes policymaking close to impossible. There's a reason why the founders, when they came up with our Constitution, did not establish a 60% threshold for passage of most legislation in the Senate, because they were smart enough to know it would result in an extremely dysfunctional legislative body, and they were right. And somewhere along the way, some people invented this crazy filibuster rule that is crippling our democracy.
Yeah, I want to.
So this is much bigger than cannabis. If there wasn't a filibuster, there could be a path. But what I'll say is, I'm very sympathetic to people who said we don't want safe banking right now because we want more. We want criminal justice. Why are we helping the big marijuana businesses and not getting, not pursuing criminal justice, social justice? I get that. I'm just a strict adherent to a philosophy of incrementalism. So, I believe that incrementalism has served the cannabis reform movement very well over the years at both the state, at the state level, not just always going for full rec. Let's pass a medical bill. Let's build on that. Let's pass a decrim bill and then pass medical. So I believe in incrementalism. And so I would have supported those safe banking provisions being passed, even if it's in a trailer to some completely unrelated piece of legislation. Again, we go back to the dysfunction of the policymaking progress in Congress. But I'm sympathetic, but I wanted to see it pass, but I'm not surprised it got cut.
Right.
And I think
I want to add, bring in
laws at the state level, and at a certain point, it'll just be.
I do want to bring in Christopher and Ashley on the discussion here now, because we haven't had an opportunity to hear from them. You've heard from Matthew now for a couple of minutes, Christopher. What's your reaction to some of the things that are irking him, let's just say?
Well, it's certainly got to be frustrating to see something passed in a popular basis in the popular vote, and then get ripped from the people's hands by a politician who's got a different agenda. And I totally agree with the position that, and in fact, it's a reason why, it's the whole entire reason why I'm an advocate as well, is because people need medicine for things, and especially for things that are not treatable with Western medicines, right? So we mentioned epilepsy. We know what the big conditions are that are commonly treated with cannabis, and many people find that it's the only solution for them. And this governor, by pulling away the right of patients to have medicine, to me is just cruel. It's just barbaric. And hopefully that kind of message, if there's messaging against her, Jimmy, you and I talked about whether cannabis is a right or left issue, and we both sort of agree, I think, that it's both, right? It's got something for everyone. It's got additional monies, it's got taxes, it's got jobs, it's got all these things. It doesn't have to be a blue or red kind of a thing. So hopefully they can take it out of that context of it's got to be a Democratic issue or it's got to be a Republican duty to kill it. Hopefully they can realize the common ground and get people like Kristi Noem out of the way who don't care about people. It's terrible.
Or democracy, I might add. Ashley, as a patient, is someone who has had tremendous success and results from using cannabis as a medicine. Can you walk us through a little bit of your story in an abbreviated view, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. So I am a cannabis patient. That's how I ended up joining the cannabis industry, actually, is that I found tremendous relief from it. I do have a condition that, so when I was 23, I was injured very, very badly. I'm disabled in one leg, have lost most of the musculature there. and ended up with severe nerve damage as a result of the injury. And there is not a treatment on the market that works for this except for cannabis. There isn't. And they had me on all kinds of different pharmaceuticals for years. And then my dad, who's a neurologist, said that he had read a study in his continuing medical education about, it was a metadata study regarding cannabis, and that it specifically works for the type of condition that I have. And actually one of those conditions, well, a lot of the conditions have to do with neurological issues, right? So nerve pain, the result of cancer treatment, like these types of pains that really aren't really treatable with what people are used to using, like narcotics or opioids or different types of things. And you get limited relief from the types of things that they do prescribe, which is, SSR, I think it's SSRIs. They're a type of antidepressant. And one of the very common ones is gabapentin. Actually, they'll use that a lot in your dogs when they have pain, because they can't give them an opioid because they don't know how to dose it for the weight. And they're very concerned that they might have a poor reaction to it. So gabapentin has been sort of the go-to for any sort of neurological disorder, such like epilepsy and neuropathic pain, and peripheral neuropathy is a big one. Also with an aging population with diabetic peripheral neuropathy, all of these things are very well helped. Well, caveat, according to this study, because I am not giving any medical advice and I am not going to, say that this will necessarily work for everybody, but for me, it was an immediate and very, very dramatic difference. And, it was after 11 years of nonsense, of absolute nonsense. And, lots of medications just being piled on to try to deal. And in addition to that, you end up being prescribed medications to deal with the symptoms of the medications. Yeah. So talking about massively over medicating people with pain management disorders or with epilepsy or with, the results of cancer treatment, which have incredibly detrimental effects on your physical being as well as your mental well-being.
Hey, Matthew, I know you've heard stories like this all the time. Yes. And it's another reason why I'm sure you're as passionate about what you do. The medical question did pass in South Dakota. And where are they now? Have they opened up any medical dispensaries in South Dakota yet?
Not yet, but the licensing process is underway at the local level. Sioux Falls, where I am, issued 5 medical dispensary licenses. Other municipalities are issuing dispensary, cultivation, manufacturing licenses. The state has been moving forward. I think, and one thing people should know is that one of the tribes here, the Flandreau Santee Sioux tribe, used its tribal sovereignty to establish its own medical program that's in alignment with the state's, and has been issuing cards and selling medical cannabis to patients for many months now, and that's provided a means for access. I think one of the challenges right now is making it easier for people to find doctors who will issue a recommendation. I'm hearing from a lot of people, my doctor that I've been going to for years won't do it. And in fairness to the doctors, that the process is still being clarified. But I think even when it is fully clear to the doctors, some of them will still be hesitant to participate. And so in the upcoming legislative session, which we're gearing up for now, we're going to try to pass a recreational bill, because that's the quickest way to uphold the will of the people. And we'd rather not do a ballot. I love winning ballot initiative campaigns, but I'd rather just get this rec law passed. But we're also going to be pursuing improvements to the medical law, including the access and the difficulty of gaining access, and making it easier for people to connect with the healthcare providers that can write that recommendation and give that patient the legal protection that they should have. The way I see it, if you're against recreational, okay, let's have a debate. But if you're against medical, you're kind of just a jerk at this point. That's how I see it, to put it in casual terms.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
joking if you're out there and you're still on the fence.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We all agree on that. All right. So Matthew, this is the time of the day, 4:20, when we usually take our first break. If you'd like to hang around, you certainly can. We are going to get into that digital payment world and cash only, and why the Safe Banking Act gets used all over the place. And then, basically how do you do business with just cash? And there's some very, very creative ways to do that. And that's why Ashley's here, because she's a financial law expert. And we are hoping that she will not necessarily grill our guests, but at least discuss with them maybe some of the challenges that they might be facing down the road. So Matthew, I thank you for making the effort of coming on today. I do enjoy talking with you, and I wish you the best of luck out there in South Dakota world. And you know what? I think the will of the people will finally happen. It just is going to take a little bit longer than expected, or it should have. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think that is. And, since 2012, no state that has passed is repealed. This is the first time. So we have to hold the line here, right? We can't allow this precedent to be established. We can't allow this overturning of the will of the people to be normalized on our issues. So we're not going to stop until cannabis is legal in this state. I should be going because I got a bunch of volunteers to call through. But it was a pleasure joining you. I'm no expert in the payment space, so you aren't losing anything with my absence. Very nice to speak with all of you and to meet Chris and Ashley.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Matthew Schweich from the Marijuana Policy Project and the South Dakotans for the right way to do business and politics out there. We're going to take our 4:20 break. I don't need to explain why, but we'll come back after this with more. Don't go away.